Hey YouTube, I have got a fun weird one for you today. Klevgränd has brought us Ting, which is a drum machine, but instead of using regular tired old Roland drum samples, it's got a whole bunch of recordings of household items. And like you could do this on your own, you could like run around your house field recording stuff with a Zoom, but they've done it in a way that not only saves you all that time, they've done it in like a really professional manner with multi-samples for every single one of these instruments. So like you get slightly different samples when you're playing it. So this is a lot of fun. I'm going to try to show it off in two ways. I'm going to show you a boring way to use this, just so I can let you hear how it sounds, and before I start doing weird stuff, and then I'm going to do weird stuff. So let's start off with sequencing this. I'm going to be using Rozeta throughout this whole video because Rozeta's got a whole bunch of different ways of sequencing. So let's add that in. I'll try to remember to use my mouse so you can see what I'm doing. It's way faster to do this with my finger. Go down to Rozeta. The most obvious one of the many Rozeta sequencers available to use for drums is the Zoc sequencer. So let's throw that in here. And we start drawing in basic 4 on the floor here and throw in a snare. And we route that now in to Ting. And you'll notice that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting the bass drum to be playing over here on C because it's laid out like a MPC where you got your bass and the snare and so on. But this is off. So you're going to have to do this in a few of the Rozeta sequencers here. If you go over to the favorite icon, it lets you either manually remap where every single part is going, or you can just use one of these presets, and the Axon 2 preset will set it up perfectly. Now it's only going to sequence 8 parts, and there are, in fact, 15 here in Ting, excuse me, 12 in Ting. So you're going to need to get creative with this. Like, let's say that you want to use the floor stomp with this. So I'll remap the low tom from 39 up to 47. And now when I sequence this, I can add it in as an extra kind of deeper kick. And the Zoc sequencer is fun, but it's kind of limited. We'll get into the more amusing stuff and throw in a little mutation on that. So let me, while that's playing and it's kind of sedate, let me kind of show off some of the features. Actually, I would like to get the pot in here too, so you can hear some of the high-end stuff. Actually, it's going to be on the high tom part. Let's see. Let's do a little Sendosa, whatever the hell that is. It's some Snusdosa? Wait, snus is that Swedish chewing tobacco. So maybe this is a chewing tobacco packet that he's tapping on. That's a little too busy. All right, we got our basic kind of groove going on here. Let me show you what's going on with the sound design options here. Now you can manually tweak all of these. Like every single part, you can tweak the panning, the gain, the dynamics, and how much to send to the space section in both the room and the reverb, because it's got a different. They're like not just the size of the reverb, but also the color. So like, listen to this versus this. You hear this just a little bit brighter? That's got a little bit more space. This is less bright, but more space. And then there's a closet, which is warmer, but obviously a lot less space. Let's put that back in the hallway now, and I'll show you the reverb sections. So the names give you a very good idea of what you're going to get. So like Glacier here, you can really hear all those highs. It's a very cold, bright sound. Wooden is a very warm sound. Let me increase the level. That's a very pleasant, warm sound. Dynamite amuses me the most, though, because you get the warmth and some of those brightness peaks. And you can further tweak this with a compressor to just kind of bring everything together and saturate it. And then there's also tweak up the bass. The treble is particularly amusing to play with too. We're going to do that in a bit. I wanted to show you the bare bones here. Like this is the boring way to do it, where we're just gonna like give a basic kind of groove in the Zoc sequencer here. But I mean, why would we? Because we got a whole world of sequencers, and this isn't your average drum machine. Let's not make it behave like an average drum machine. Let's get creative with this. So let's throw in I guess we'll start in progressive layers of weirdness. Let's throw in Rozeta's rhythm, which has a very unique way of working with things. Gotta remember to pipe that in now to I keep forgetting to use my mouse. We're routing that now into Ting. And this, if you're unfamiliar with Rozeta rhythm, lets you work entirely in math, basically. So, oh yeah, and once again, you gotta remap it. And you might, you could just barely hear that. So I did the thing where I hit the favorite icon and then made it into Axon 2, but you'll probably also need to adjust the velocity levels, because this normal is just way too quiet. So let's bump that up. That sounds better. All right. I don't want it to be too crazy. But with this math, right? So I say, give me 3 beats in 16 steps or 4 beats in 16 steps. I can do creative things like, well, give me 2 beats every 12 steps. Now we're doing a polyrhythm. Or maybe we want to shift that. So it's a really fast and easy way to create polyrhythms that actually sound quite good. Let's skip the Sndosa or Sndosa for a second here, and actually I want to change the length of that. So this is a very logical, kind of mathematical way of doing this. Which is sounding great, right? But rhythm has an amazing hidden feature. If you hit the little dice thing over here, it actually randomizes patterns that sound good, which is really, really hard to do for drum parts. Like it's really hard to do that, but this does it like almost every single time. Let's see what happens. All right, that's not bad. One of these things is just sound a little too bonkers. I think it's this. If you get into, if you get something you hear like, well, okay, that's a little bit too much of whatever that is, you can just tap on that and it kills that one part. So the rest of this is sounding good. It's probably fun to bounce back and forth between this and our original pattern here. Let's generate another pattern. Man, it just loves to overdo it on that one. Here, let's try to actually tweak this to be less obnoxious. But once again, we're running into that problem where this is only sequencing 8 parts, and Ting has got many parts. So let me show you another sequencer here. Let's bring in the particle in Rozeta. And remembering to now map that in here. All right. Now, here, it's automatically running already, doing its thing. Now, I'm going to leave the Ting up so you can see it while we're working on it in here. So, there's a lot of ways to play with particles. Basically, whenever one of these little particles hits this wall, it plays whatever note is associated with it. The same with the other wall over there. So, we can cause a lot more to happen by increasing the speed. Let me change this from 64ths to 16ths. Maybe even 8ths. You can also increase the density. But you'll notice if you pay attention to all these, they're lighting up down here, there are some that just aren't getting hit, and that's because it's trying to lock it into a scale. Now we can kind of screw with it by just dramatically opening up the note range that it can do. Just max it out. Let me change this over to a chromatic. Let me increase the speed so we can see that faster. And when you do have it maxed out, you see how it's hitting like lots at once? We can change the density to keep that pace, but reduce the amount they're hitting it at once. Like, I really, really love playing with particles in this. It's just like, I'm gonna come back to show you exactly why I love this so much, but I want to first get you started here on getting all this mapped in. So it's hitting basically everything except for the floor stomp right now. So that's good enough, because we're actually going to be using the floor stomp in an entirely different way. But now we've got this slider here that is basically our give me the crazy. So now it's kind of a funky groove that's not too crazy, and we can build up the crazy. So when you're playing with things that are going to sound quite intense, it usually helps to have something that's less intense as kind of a base to your rhythm section here, where I'm just going to say, give me a basic 4 on the floor pattern, something everybody knows and loves and expects, because that's like a big key to doing anything weird, is give them the weirdness with the stuff that they already expect, because if you just give them weirdness, they're going to reject it altogether. So we're just doing a 4 on the floor here, give them a snare here, snare-ish thing here. All right, so now we got this really super boring thing that when we drop in our fun stuff on, it sounds great, right? I really love playing with it like this, because we can do all kinds of things, like bounce between this. Like, okay, we got the particles going now. I'm gonna kill that and switch into the rhythm. Maybe do some pattern juggling here in rhythm. That's good. It's kind of calm, so we can now switch into particles. kind of bring it down. Now we're keeping it calm. While we've got it in a calm mode, let me show you some other things that I like to do with this. And once again, using Rozeta, we've got all of these things here that we're really not playing with at all, right? We can play around with the reverb and the decay, which can be quite amusing to play with. And we've also got these tone, which affects all of the parts. So let's do that. Let's start manipulating that as well. I'm going to bring in LFO from Rozeta. And if you are unfamiliar with the way automation works in AUM, it's kind of hidden, but it's really, really good. Like in most DAWs, if you start talking about automation, you talk about just like an automation lane and then like drawing in lines all over it. And this is not drawing in lines. This is me saying, screw lines. I want a crazy looking LFO to go at my reverb or whatever. So the way we do that is, really got to remember to use the mouse to follow where I'm going here. I hit the hamburger up here on the top right, hit the MIDI control, and down here at the bottom you see channels. That will expose the parameters. And now here are all of the things that we can assign through this. So Ting won't take MIDI. Like if you try to route from this from LFO directly into Ting, that's just not going to work. What you got to do is route LFO into MIDI control, the built-in thing here. And now we can send that to the MIDI control of Ting parameters. So let's start with the reverb level here. I know that this is going to be channel 1 and CC13, I think, is the first LFO. Oh yeah, that was definitely the first control. You can immediately hear what's going on there. Let me bring up Ting so we can see that while it's going on. So now I got this LFO that's going wildly back and forth. We can calm that down now. Bring up the min some, bring down the max some. And one of the things that I love the most about LFO is the way that it illustrates the LFO. You know, we see exactly what the sine wave is doing, and it lets us play with that in ways that are really, really useful. So this is just a kind of a boring, slow LFO, but it's got this mod over here that lets me modulate that sine. So it lets me find entirely new grooves. Like you can actually see the grooves as I'm playing around with this. All right, that's a really good demonstration of what I'm talking about. So sometimes it's getting low and sometimes it's getting a little higher, but it's always keeping this groove, and I love being able to do that. And I think that using something like this adds a lot of extra depth and growth and evolving stuff to what are just household items, right? Like this is just, how is a foot stomp supposed to sound interesting? Well, we're doing weird shit into the reverb with an LFO that's wildly playing with the level is a good way to do that. Let's send the next one over here to the decay. We'll go to the hamburger, MIDI control, Ting parameters, and change that to channel 1, CC15. Now, you can really hear how big of a difference that makes. And like, I'm not sure if I like how big of a difference that is, but I'm gonna leave it on for right now. We'll come back and tweak that if we need to. I just want to keep this moving. So we're using 2 of these LFOs. We've got 3. Let's send another one over at the bass. That's on CC17. But instead of a sine here, I want to use a sample and hold, which is noise, basically random. And I think I want to tempo sync this rate. I'm just basically looking for movement right now to see if it's moving at this pace I want it to move in at. modding it. I definitely want to reduce the min on this because I don't want it to completely cut out my bass. I'm okay with it pumping it way up though. Alright, we've run out of LFOs, so let's just throw in another one real quick here because I want to show that you can just really go wild with this. So throwing in another one, and remember to route it to the built-in MIDI control. And right now you'll see that all of these just went completely bonkers, right? Because we're using the same exact CCs on both of these, and we don't want that to happen. So let's move this up to 19 and just deactivate these two because we're not even going to be using them. So now we got 19 to play with. Let's go back into our MIDI control. Tremors, and for this one, let's make it do like a sweep on the treble. And once again, that's a little too fast and a little too much. I'm kind of glad that I left the decay doing that crazy thing because it really does sound very interesting when it's just completely cut out and like kind of a dry decay there. So now we're doing weird stuff with the treble and the bass. This can lead to some weird scenarios where sometimes like there's no treble and there's no bass. Let's leave the mids boosted just a bit. So we always have kind of like a warm, gooey center to our weirdness here. That should work. Let's take this all now and apply it in kind of a performance style here. So right now we are listening to our very generic Zoc sequence, our particles, which are being calm right now. Kind of add some excitement and that decay might be just a little too low. All right, swap it over to rhythm. That decay is going to just keep bugging the hell out of me if I don't fix it. Yeah, when it was too dry, it was too dry. We can hop around in patterns. And when now we've got rhythm off, we've got particles on, particles is doing its thing. While that's happening, we could generate another pattern. And this looks like a reasonably calm pattern, except for this CH. Like, Jesus Christ, it just really loves that. Let's kill that one now. And we're gonna bring rhythm in with the particles. Kind of bring it down to some of our calmer rhythms. And now here, I'm bringing down particles while we're not hearing it, so I can bring it in. Now I just dropped the Zocs because we've got kind of a very, very solid sounding low end of all this that I didn't want to have the Zocs throwing in more on top of. And that was getting too weird, so I calmed it down a little bit. I think that's given a reasonable demonstration of what I'm talking about here, where it doesn't make any sense to treat this as a drum machine and just be doing boring stuff with it. Let's have fun with it, and let's like really just go wild. I think that makes these household items sound lively and interesting. I hope that you've thought that this was lively and interesting, and I want to thank very much all my Patreon patrons for making these videos possible. Take it easy, folks.